Morning, everybody. Oh, yeah, that's way better. Last week, Pastor Dan said good morning. Everybody was like, are we allowed to talk in church? It's like a whole new experience for us. So I'm inviting you to interact with me. I'm excited. I got Logan right here, and Logan we like to interact when I'm preaching, so thanks for being front and center, buddy. I appreciate it. All right, for those of you, I love this kid. For those of you that are new or visiting, I'm not Pastor Dan. We look so much alike that we get mistaken for twins all the time. I'm Pastor Jason. I've been hiding behind the cameras through this whole season of weirdness, so I've been doing video editing and things like that. So I haven't got a chance to preach. I've been wanting to preach, but I had to do the other side of my job. It's important. I was helping get that out there just as Tamara was saying. And then I realized something. I probably haven't preached all year. I gotta remember how to preach. I gotta remember how to get up in front of a big group of people and start talking to them. So this morning, your job as good God-fearing Christians is to practice grace towards me as I knock the rust off of this and we see what we're gonna do here today. I want to ask you guys a really important question, probably the most important question you're going to hear all day. Who here likes to try new foods? Ooh, I saw hands in the back in the foyer. I see people jumping around. I love this church. Okay, let me ask you another more important question. How many of you guys could get by with like eating the same 5 or 6 things every day, all day? Cool, I see some good hands there. Yeah, I'm with you. And then how many of you magical unicorns are like, either one, I'm just happy to have food? All right, there we go. There's my fellow foodies. Yeah, I'm definitely a bit of both. We've been in the series on manna. That's why I'm talking about food and getting you all hungry for lunch. Manna, or as the Israelites so eloquently called it. What is it? I imagine that's how it was pronounced because we read the Bible like, it's what is it? And I'm like, no. You see flaky stuff on the ground. What is it? The funny story about manna is that somebody had to be the first person to come along and pick it up and insert it into their mouth. Does anybody have that friend or that child that you constantly have to say, hey, don't put that in your mouth? Now I said child or friend. It's weird that we still have grown-ups in this day and age where you go, no. Don't put... Have you ever had to tell an adult, Ucky? No, don't do that. It's gross. I mean, I know people that will pick stuff up off the ground and eat it still. I'm like, what are you doing? Yeah, I've witnessed this. There are people that ignore the expiration date. The expiration date could have a 19 in it. They're like, it's still good. Scrape the top off. The stuff underneath is gold. So if you know, you're like sitting next to me, I told you you're not supposed to scrape it off the pastor knows. But I imagine that there was this poor Israelite guy, probably spent his whole life getting picked on as the guy that eats anything, you know? And then here we go, we've got God saying, I'm gonna provide food for you, and this magical flaky stuff lands on the ground, and everybody's looking at it like, it wasn't there yesterday. Should we try it? You know, and I'm sure it was a group discussion. You probably had 4 or 5 of the most important guys. I don't know, it's on the ground. I figured God would wrap it in something before he delivered it, you know, because that's how God works. He's very professional. And they're wondering about it. And I just imagine, call him Jeff. He just walks over, flaky stuff. And he's probably chowing down, and you probably had 2 or 3 of the other guys like, Jeff, don't, it was on the ground. And the other guys go, shh, let's see what happens. How many of you are the Jeff don't? How many of you are, shh, let's see what he does? Yeah. So I imagine that once Jeff popped a handful and, you know, they were good, they just shouted back, hey guys, we can eat, it's good, Jeff's fine. Thanks, Jeff. And he went from being your weird guy eating things off the floor to being your taste tester / hero. So don't underestimate your taste testers and the people that, you know, will eat the bark off a tree. Manna is definitely something that requires a certain mindset. How many of you guys are like the, manna again crowd? Yeah. And then how many of you are like, woo, manna! Thank God I get to eat again. I'm in that category. I'm like, hey, there's food. I'm here. I'm happy. Just being honest. But a phrase that came to mind during this quarantine, this recent season we went through, as I was challenged with this, is do you admire the beauty of a flower, or are you fixated on the manure that it grew out of? Now, last week, Pastor Dan got to say C-R-A-P-P-Y, so I'm okay saying M-A-N-U-R-E. Did it? quarantine proposed some interesting challenges, and there were some serious manure moments. How many people can amen that?
Amen.
There you go. All right, you're just as guilty as me. But that was the question, is am I going to focus on that, or am I going to open my eyes to the beauty of what God is doing all around me? And I found that in the quarantine, I was able to tackle some projects that I had needed to get to. I was able to rekindle some old passions and some hobbies, so that was pretty cool. And most importantly, I was able to spend more time with my family, especially around the dinner table. And I'm going to tell you something exciting about our dinner table. My mom has been staying with us because she's in transition from one house to another, and my mom is an excellent cook. But what do you do when you're only allowed to go to the grocery store? You cook. So every night Danielle was like, I kind of like your mom being here because I come home to a home-cooked meal, and I'm like, yeah, if it was me, it'd just be eggs and toast. Good luck. So I gave this week's sermon, where Manna Mindset is our series, but today's sermon would be Come to the Table. That's going to be my title, my subtitle for today, Come to the Table. I thought about calling it Come to the Table If You Want to Live, and then using an Arnold accent, but I was like, you know what, that might be too dramatic for a Sunday morning, so come to the table if you want to live. I fought that, I really did. I didn't want to do it, but it just came out, so okay. Over the next two Sundays, because I'll be preaching next week, because Dan and Suzanne will be out of town still. Pray for them that they can recover, man. They have been busy in this last season, so anyways, back to me. So over the next 2 Sundays, we're going to be covering this topic, and we're going to discuss what I mean by coming to the table. It's not just about food. The importance of coming to the table, and who we should be setting a place for at the table. Man, that all sounds really good. I can't wait till next week. When I was a kid, we would have these big family get-togethers, and the dinner table was a magical place. So as a kid, you found your seat, right? And if you were lucky, you knew your sign of maturity, you got to sit at the grown-up table. Otherwise, you're at the kid table. And there was amazing food. It just appeared. There was hilarious conversation. When you were done eating, you just left your stuff and you went and played. Then when you came back to the table later because you were hungry, magically it was all cleared. Wow, weird. And then you came back a little bit later, and then there was dessert. Manna. Just appeared out of nowhere. I had no clue what really went on and how hard people were working to make this meal masterpiece for us. I took it for granted, but today I recognize that I'm so blessed. I'd like to say thank you to everybody that's ever cooked anything for anybody, ever. You're awesome. We appreciate you. Thank you, unsung heroes. I remember one time as a kid, we were sitting down to a meal, and I don't know if you guys are like me. You look at one side of your family, and you're like, that's my normal side. And then you look at your other side of the family, and you go, that's my less than normal side. So my dad's side of the family, wait, let me say it politely. My mom's side of the family was my normal side of the family. I'll leave the rest to your imagination. So we were with my dad's side, and we were sitting down to dinner, and as a little kid, adults say things, and you don't really understand their sense of humor, right? Like, what does that even mean? What are they talking about? So my dad's side of the family did this weird thing. If you didn't hear somebody, they had this odd phrase. Now, if you didn't hear me, you would say, what? Come again? Beg your pardon? Could you repeat that? Something along those lines. Their side of the family said, who died? Yeah, soak that in for a second. You didn't hear what I said? Or I didn't hear what you said? Who died? Now, imagine being a little kid sitting at a table, and you've been to a few funerals, and every time there was a funeral in our family, we had to drive for 12 hours. And I hear, who died? I'm terrified. Because not only do I think, the worst has happened, but they won't tell me who. Like, it's really rough leaving a little kid hanging. Somebody says, who died? And you're like, who died? And they're like, yeah, right. And you're like, no, really. I want to know. This is scary. Was it grandma? Was it grandpa? You're terrified as a kid. And that is probably why I am the way that I am today. Now we have it all clarified. All right. So let's get away from that. Let's get into why we need to come to the table now that we've talked about how weird the table is. Food is one of the most basic human needs. We all have this need in common. In a world where we differ in our views, beliefs, morals, and opinions, we can all settle on the fact that we need to eat. But we can't all settle on the fact that we need to pick a restaurant. You know that's the curse that is just about to get you in probably about a half hour, 45 minutes. Where do you want to eat? I don't know. Where do you want to eat? You name 5 places, and they're like, no, I don't want any of those. Well, then you pick. I don't know, whatever you want. Thanks, you've been there too. But let's look at Jesus. A lot of Jesus' ministry revolves around meals. It's one of the other reasons why I love Jesus so much. And it involves food to some capacity. We're going to look at Luke chapter 9, starting with verse 12. Late in the afternoon, the 12 came to him and said, "Send the crowd away so they can go to the surrounding villages and countryside and find food and lodging, because we are in a remote place here." He, that's Jesus, he replied, "You give them something to eat." They answered, "We have only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Unless you want, we can go buy food for the crowd." Verse 14 says, "But there's about 5,000 men there." But he said to the disciples, "Have them sit down in groups of about 50 each." The disciples did so, and everyone sat down. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke them. Then he gave them to the disciples to distribute to the people. They all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. Who here loves leftovers? Oh, then you love this verse. You're like, yes, don't throw it away. Save it for later. First thing we need to learn from Jesus right here. This is incredibly important. Jesus saw the physical need of the people, and he gave direction to his disciples. You feed them. This is really interesting the way he phrases this. You feed them. It wasn't if they accept Jesus into their heart, you feed them. It wasn't if they tithe 10%, you feed them. It wasn't check their Facebook history and if you agree with them, you feed them. It was strictly, you feed them. That is one of the most plain things I have ever heard come out of the mouth of Jesus, and I love it. It's just so to the point, and it's so Jesus. Just feed him. All right? So Jesus' brother James tells us in James chapter 1 to look after the widows and the orphans. So Jesus' earthly ministry and the early church constantly pointed to taking care of the less fortunate and those in need, period. All right? Nothing tagged onto them. You take care of them. You feed them. The command has been given, so there had to be a point for the disciples where they decided to start passing out the food. Right? Can you imagine how awkward this is? There's literally not enough to go around for all these people, and Jesus says, you feed them. There had to be this insane moment where they're like, let's just do it. Let's just start passing this stuff out and see what happens. Because you're like, I'm just going to accept the fact somebody's going to yell at me today because they didn't get enough fish. It's just the way humans do this. But the disciples took that leap of faith. And I came up with this question. Logic left, and they took this leap. So here's your question. Is your obedience to God logic locked? Will you only obey God in a way that seems logical to you? There is only 2 fish, Jesus, so therefore I cannot pass this out to this many people. Or, Jesus said grace. That's the greatest grace I've ever heard, so I'm going to try it and see what happens. That is the mindset we need to get. Something interesting about this commission to feed the 5,000. It's clear that it's a supernatural miracle, but what I think is cool about it is it's actually setting the stage for something even bigger later. I kind of consider this the pre-miracle miracle. How many of you guys would like a pre-miracle miracle? Yeah, I'm with you there. That'd be pretty cool. So sometimes God, he asks us to step out of our comfort zone before he throws us out of our comfort zone. And what I mean is I was talking with Mike Thompson, the head of our men's ministry, and he was talking about skydiving during our men's group the other week, and we're like, you're crazy. But with skydiving, there's this first part of your crazy where you have to board the plane. So if you're afraid of heights and airplanes, your first, adventure is actually getting on the plane. And then there is the leaving the plane when it is not on the ground. So what we're talking about right here with this miracle is this is boarding the miracle plane and getting ready for a bigger jump a little later. So here's where we get the pre-miracle miracle. Later, we all know Peter, right? Raise your hand if you know Peter. Yeah, love-hate relationship. I'm just like him and I can't stand him. So Peter's one of Jesus' disciples, and he tells Jesus, he goes, I'll be with you through anything. The ride or die buddy, as if you had to verbalize it. And Jesus is like, okay, cool, but to tell you the truth, before the rooster crows in the morning, you're going to deny me 3 times. You're going to deny even knowing me. And Peter's like, whatever. What does Jesus know? So then Jesus gets arrested, And then sure enough, some of these guys come up to Peter and they're like, hey, you were with Jesus, you were one of the disciples. Boom, 3 times he says no, to the point he's so mad he's swearing at him, right? And we all know when a Christian starts blowing their top and they're swearing, something's going on. So he denies Jesus. He's just, oh my gosh, he's devastated. I can't believe I did this. And what's worse, I can't believe I did this. And Jesus called me out. I knew it was coming. He said it and I still wasn't able to stop it. That's how big of a knucklehead I am. How many of you feel like that sometimes? Like, God called it. And I still went through with it. So we had that moment, and then Jesus died on the cross. He rose again. And he and Peter had this amazing reconciliation, reinstating moment, okay? So what happened is they were out on the boat, and they're fishing, and they bring in the fish, and they're sitting on the beach, right? And Jesus is talking with Peter, and they're having breakfast. Again, a meal. And they're sitting there, and this is what went down. John chapter 21, starting with verse 15. When they had finished eating, I love that he waited until he was done eating. It's like I got something to say. When he had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, he said, you know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my lambs. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. The 3rd time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the 3rd time. Now, remember, Peter denied him 3 times. Jesus had given him 3 times to get caught back up. He said, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. It's such a cool response here from Jesus. Jesus said, feed my sheep. Now, how many of you guys have ever been in trouble with somebody and you're apologizing and you're having this reconciliation moment, and you know in that moment, that person can ask you for anything? Sky's the limit. You name it, it's yours. I blew it big time. I will do whatever you want. And so we're in that moment, and what is Jesus asking Peter for? Not for himself. Take care of my sheep. I think that's such a Jesus thing. So the same thing Jesus said to Peter and the disciples on the hill with the crowd is what Jesus is saying again to Peter here. You feed them. And it's this constant theme that Jesus is coming back to. I want you to take care of their needs. He could have asked Peter for anything like we said, but all he asked for is, I want you to take care of other people. I want you to be selfless. I want you to look to the needs of those that are struggling and those that are hurting. So what does Peter do? A short while later, turn a few pages, and we're in Acts chapter 2. Peter preaches to a massive crowd, telling them all about Jesus and how Jesus is the Son of God, Jesus is the Messiah, Jesus died and rose again. So let's look at Acts chapter 2, verse 41. Those who believed what Peter said were baptized and added to the church that day, about 3,000 in all. So it means he was obviously talking to an even bigger crowd than that, but that's 3,000 people that responded. All the believers devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship. Let's get ready for an amen. And to sharing in meals. Amen. There we go. And the Lord's Supper and to prayer. And I thought about this statement as I was reading that people don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care. It's plain and simple. It's one of the most simple ways we could put it. And I'd love to know how many people were in this crowd of the 3,000 that heard about the feeding of the 5,000. I'm curious to know how many of them got some of the leftovers. Like, somebody comes home here, you want some fish and some bread? Yeah, where'd you get it? Well, you're never going to believe this. How many received God's kindness through a simple meal first, which softened their heart so they could receive God's full love and salvation later? I just love what took place here. On the hill with the food, Jesus tells Peter, I will provide you with something supernatural to satisfy their physical hunger. You just need to pass it out and feed them. Then, after the hill with the cross, Jesus tells Peter, I will provide you with something supernatural to satisfy their spiritual hunger. You just need to pass it out to feed them, which is the good news of Jesus' death and resurrection and the forgiveness of our sins. And you see how that parallel lines up? It's like, I'm setting you up to feed them this way, and I'm providing food. And I'm setting you up to feed them this way, and I'm providing food again. All you got to do is pass it out. So here's what's been stirred in my heart and why coming to the table has become such a mission in my mind is at the table there's intimacy, there's vulnerability, and there's commonality. I want to give you guys a personal example. I'm going to point out Jerome and Donna. We have a very fun relationship with Jerome and Donna. Dan and Donna have a big back and forth, and it's just part of family. It's cool. But joking aside, the serious part of one of the things that I love so much about Jerome and Donna is when they first came to the church, they've been in ministry for quite a while, ran their own church, they've done it all. And so their first mission here, which I think was amazing to set the stage, is they started looking for walls to tear down and started looking for opportunities to build bridges, to help develop the community that we have here today. And I think you guys are very much credited with that. But the way they did it was one meal at a time. I don't know if you guys know, but Pastor Jerome is an amazing cook. Oh wait, no, you were cooking, Donna? Oh, I've had it wrong this whole time. I always thought it was Jerome doing the cooking. No. Jerome's laughing. He's like, yes, I can cook Spam all day. I got a Spam hot dog casserole. Anyway, so what they would do is they would invite people over for meals, and during that time, you were required, this is what you had to do, you were required to come as you are and only bring you. And from there, you were welcomed into their home. Like they would bring you right inside. They cared for you. And get this is the craziest thing I've ever seen anybody do. You were listened to. Except for Jerome, because he was watching a game on TV. But I'll tell you what, during commercials, he was so attentive. But what I loved about it is it was very obvious. They didn't take that time to put that effort forth to push an agenda. But instead, they took that time to listen and to get to know people and understand people. And I've known Jerome and Donna probably 25 years. And what's cool about that is they didn't need to do that with me. To me, when I first saw them back here at the church after so many years, I was like, this is my family. And even still, they're like, well, you come too. I want to feed you. I want to hear you. And I was like, man, that's really nice of you guys. You don't have to do that. And I was like, we don't have to do it. But it's what we're called to do, so you better let us. You don't argue with a cold. Amen, Alicia? There you go. But here's where we are. Our world needs healing, and part of that healing comes from caring and hearing. Caring and hearing. I was thinking about it. Would you go to a doctor that didn't listen to you? You're sitting on that table, and he starts doing his thing, and you're trying to tell him what's hurting, and he's like, shh, I got it. I'm out. You ain't paying that bill. When it comes to the table, it gives us a chance to provide for someone's most basic need and gives us an excuse to shut our mouths. We chew with our mouths closed so we can listen to someone and we can hear how they are, who they are, and why they are. Do we have that opportunity really in life where we can hear those three things from somebody? How they are, who they are, and why they are. We see everywhere on social media people shouting at each other, and there's just this weird fighting, and it's like they get louder and louder, and nobody hears each other. You know, my old boss used to say when the shouting starts, the listening stops. So he got loud one time, and I was like, oh, I can't hear you. But recently I was on Facebook, and there was this post, and I saw that two friends of mine had commented on it. And I was like, I didn't know they knew each other, and I still don't think they knew each other. And dude, they were going at it. Like, they were mad at each other. And there was like a full-blown Facebook fight. I'm like, you know what? If they were sitting at a dinner table, I don't think this would be taking place. I think if one of them invited the other one over to their house and they were having a real conversation about this and they would close their mouths for a little bit and open their ears and understand where somebody is coming from, I think it would have been a completely different situation. But we get so heated and we get so wrapped up in things. We're so fast forward. Opportunity for spreading verbal toxicity, hate, judgment, it's everywhere. We don't have to create it ourselves. It's already there. It spreads worse than a plague. And with all my heart, I believe God is calling the church back to a place for love, healing, provision, hope, and reconciliation. But we have to be willing, the sermon's going to get tough right here, guys. I apologize. We have to be willing to humble ourselves and surrender our will and our agenda to God. I want to share one last example of exactly what I'm talking about. Worship team, if you guys want to come back up. Here's one last example in Scripture. And this to me is just, if you ever want to explain why you love Jesus to somebody, this is the verse you bring up. John chapter 13, starting with verse 3. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power. What things were put under Jesus' power? All things. So he's all powerful, right? So Jesus got this. All right. So we're understanding where Almighty Jesus is on the scene. And he said, let me read. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. With all things under his power, and knowing that his death was at the door, he knelt down and washed dirty, nasty feet. Now I was thinking, if our King humbled himself to wash the feet of his creation, how much more are we called to serve those in need, to serve others? Pastor Dan challenged us, this last couple weeks with Manna moments and looking for those everywhere we could find them. And my encouragement for you guys this week is to be able to look for your opportunity to come to the table. How can I set the table for somebody? What does this look like in my life? Next week, we're going to get a little bit deeper into it, the who and all of that. But for this week, I want you guys just to start asking God to open your mind. And ask yourself, when is the last time you consciously reached out to provide for someone or serve someone and opened up just to hearing them? Where you go, I'm just going to close my mouth and I'm just going to listen to what they have to say. I just want to hear where they're coming from. Here at our church, The Well, we're about three things: worshiping, connecting, and serving. And I was like, man, God, I don't want that to be a motto on the wall, but I want that to be what we as a congregation live out every single day: worshiping, connecting, and serving. I mean, Jesus did it. With all authority and all power, he got down on his hands and knees and he started washing feet. It even said he went and got the water himself. He didn't say, hey, bring me that bucket. He's like, no, I'm going to do the whole thing. You don't have to help me. I'm going to do this for you guys. So during this closing worship song, just begin to ask God where you can serve so that ears and hearts can be opened, so that you can hear those that you're serving, so that Christ can use you to share his love. He took this movement all the way to the cross. I'm going to serve you all the way up to my death. We need to be reflective of that and say, okay, Jesus, what are you asking me to do? Because I'm a Christian. It means I'm somebody that wants to imitate you, to be like you. So what is it that I need to do? What is my foot washing? What does my table moment look like? So I'm going to turn it over to you, Rachel, and she's going to lead us in, the team's going to lead us in this last song. And like I said, just open your hearts up and see what God has to say.